What's up, everybody? This is Barnun, and I thank you for watching this video. I'm going to make a quick video response to someone, and I'm not going to say their name, but it was an individual that was talking about my Truth About the United States Law and You video, and at one point was making comments based on their feelings and opinions and didn't actually watch the video, ended up turning around and watched it and pretty much kept the same opinion. And I have heard this from some people. And I want to talk about this because it actually is something that I think is legitimate, understandable, and something that should be talked about. And there are people that say, okay, well, I now know it's a corporation. I now know that it's not what I thought it was. So what? That is a legitimate question. My response to that would be, and the first, right off the bat, is should you not be concerned with a government who is controlling the laws, controlling the rules, controlling if you can live or die, if you get government assistance or not, who could throw you in jail, and basically controls your freedom? Shouldn't you be concerned that those very people have been lying to you? That right off the bat, to me, would at least say that I'm not going to just take everything they say with a grain of salt. So right off the bat, if our governments throughout the world were honest and forthright and gave us the choice to make the decision, I would have more respect for those governing people. But the fact that this has to be searched to the point where it takes decades or maybe even centuries with dozens, if not hundreds, if not thousands of individual people having to put the pieces together, taking year after year to formulate the puzzle to the point where it's not even complete yet. I, for one, say I have a problem with that. And again, when we talk about things like the Stockholm Syndrome, that is where people fall in love with their captors. And what they've done is they've created a prison with no walls and no chains. Because you are not as free as they lead you to believe. Because you cannot take all of your belongings and try and leave your country without first showing some form of identification. You know, the Germans were very famous in World War II asking for papers. But they can also confiscate your goods. They can dictate what you can and cannot do. And the very laws that they make, they are above. So if we see how things are getting more and more restrictive, our freedoms are getting reduced by the year, the economies are not improving, the people that are in power are getting wealthier and wealthier. To sit there and say, well, I don't have a problem with it, or so what? To me, albeit a legitimate thing to say, I just cannot understand. And the whole fact of, and I've heard this from several people, so I'm not just pinpointing this on one particular person, but I've heard people say that humans were made to be led. I do not agree with that. I believe there should be certain laws. Like, I believe that you should have a driver's license in order to drive a vehicle, but only for the fact that it shows that you've taken the necessary education to be able to operate that machinery and being a careful driver. I believe that a doctor should go and get a license and be educated in their field. So not just anybody can go and say, I'm going to operate on a person. I believe if another person takes the life of another person or hurts another person with malice in intent, they should be punished, maybe even imprisoned, maybe even executed. So I believe there should be certain laws to keep people from becoming total chaos, do whatever I want. So I'm not against all forms of government. But when we get to the point where the government is listening in on our phone calls, listening in on our conversations, patting us down, even children and elderly at the airports, and using fear to control us. I don't believe in that kind of government anywhere. And I have spent my whole life, see, I may not be a millionaire, and I don't need to be one, because I don't believe success is fully dictated just on the fact of how much fiat dollars you have in your pocket. Despite people's opinions of someone like me based on what they see on a video, they don't know me. And I am very content with how I am and how I've lived, and my choices that I've decided to make. And you should too. But since 2000, well, actually since around 2001, I have worked on my own. I have been my own boss. I do what I want when I want. I haven't gone around murdering people because it's wrong. I don't go out stealing from people because it's wrong. I understand because I have a brain that I use to know the difference between right and wrong. That doesn't mean I don't make mistakes. But it also means I know the difference between having an argument and maybe saying, oh, I'm going to fight somebody, to going along and taking a gun and putting it in somebody's head and blowing their brains out. It should be the person's responsibility to govern themselves, to know the difference. And so many people feel that they've been conditioned since your childhood, since you were going to school. They condition you to listen to authority. And look what authority does. Like, for example, if you've gone to school, you know that at some point in your educational system, they've told you the whole purpose of your life is to get an education, get a job, open a savings account, and save your money. And if you've done just that, you've helped them by doing the labor. You've helped them by putting your money in a savings account, which every year when they print more and more of that money, or currency as it really is, that you actually lose value. And I'll give you an example. Let's say, obviously this is the year 2014. Let's say in the year 2000, there were two people that had a $100,000. And one decides to take the $100,000 and put it in the bank and not touch it. The other person decides, I'm going to buy $100,000 worth of gold. Well, in 2014, you have the person that had $100,000 still in their bank account, thinking, wow, I have $100,000. But how much less of items can you buy with that same amount of money, as opposed to when you could have bought it in the year 2000? How much have prices risen? So you have actually maintained the same amount, dollar-wise, number-wise. But purchase-wise, you could buy maybe a quarter of what you could with that money. And even with the dips that are going on with the gold and the manipulation, gold around the year 2000 was approximately around $400 an ounce. Even with the current dips, let's just say for argument's sake, it's at $12.50. Now, that person didn't become rich because with inflation and with devaluation of the dollar, he pretty much probably has the same amount of money now to purchase the same things he could have in the year 2000. Governments won't tell you that. The fact that they lie to us, the fact that they are above the very laws that they expect us to follow, shows that it is a big deal. There are some people that need to be led. There are some people that are born followers. There are some people that cannot handle the responsibility for their own actions and need to have someone else to put their blame on and say, oh, well, you know, my father used to hit me, so that's why I hit my children. Or I'm an alcoholic because my mother was an alcoholic. It's all about taking responsibility for yourself and knowing the difference between right and wrong. And that's why I can choose to do something that some people may not agree with. Saying, oh, why is he so serious? Oh, why is he always harping on this? Well, because, like in the Matrix, when you have the choice between the red pill and the blue pill, it's nothing more than choice. And if you choose to serve and be led, then that's exactly what you are getting. Be careful what you wish for, you may get it. So from my point of view, and I'm sure a lot of others that are free thinkers, we cannot fathom how people can say, so what? Because at what point do we say it's too much? When we see every year our freedoms are being reduced more and more, because they don't do it all at once. Because if you did it all at once, the average person would say, where is this coming from? And react. But when you do a little bit at a time, you get used to it. But where does it stop? Do you have a problem? Like when some people say, oh, I don't mind that the NSA is listening in on my phone calls or reading my emails, because if you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to worry about. Well, what if they decide that every morning when you're in the shower, they have to make sure you don't have any weapons and do a body cavity search? Every time you leave your house, again, body cavity search. On your way to work, they can randomly pull you over. If you have nothing to hide, shouldn't be a problem. But see how ridiculous that sounds? At what point is it too much? And by the time we get to that point, it's too late. So I am one of those people. I am not some person that says we shouldn't have governments. We definitely need rules, because there are obviously people in this world who do evil, who do wrong. There are people, please, on the internet that spend their entire existence attacking others, with their only reasoning and logic behind it is because they don't like the person, or they don't like that person's right to have a freedom of speech. And they do nothing but attack and insult instead of just having a honest, intelligent, intellectual debate. So there are people who need to be led. I, for one, believe we should have a small amount of government, but honest government. People where we have the choice to say, no, this isn't right, let's change it. It's not, this is the law, follow it, too bad if you don't like it. There's a reason why we have more prisoners in this country than anywhere else in the world, and for the smallest of crimes. And I'm a firm believer in if you murder somebody, if you rob somebody, you do damage to somebody, you deserve what you get. But the average person isn't doing that. I've lived on this street since 1998. I've never had a problem with my neighbors. We might not agree from time to time, but we've never wanted to go beat each other up or set each other's houses on fire or go out in a blaze of glory shooting each other. The average person doesn't want that. It's the governments that start the wars. So how many children have been lost because governments, they need more money, and they send you over to get someone else's country's private rights and freedoms to have their own resources. We steal them. How many children have died for a corporate gain of profit? So if you don't think it matters, I don't know what to say to those people. There are just certain people that will never understand it. And again, they have the right to do it, and I respect it. And the person that made the comment in the beginning when I started this video, and the reason for this video, they actually based it on the fact that they sat down, watched the video, and had an opinion. See, I can respect that. But somebody that comes along and doesn't watch the information and just automatically dismisses something without the even ability to research it, I can't respect that person. Because that's like a first grade student trying to tell a person that has a PhD in astrophysics that the very things that he's talking about doesn't make sense because it sounds silly. What do you think the PhD, the scientist, is going to say to that person? Like, who the hell do you think you are? You're arguing with me when you don't even know what you're talking about, and you're basing it on the fact that the words sound silly because you don't understand them? Everybody has the right to have their own life. And that's what some of the people here on YouTube don't seem to understand, and spend time attacking people like myself and others because they don't like what we say. Well, you can't say you want a world of freedom and then not give the ability of the people to be free, to make their own decisions, to make their own choices, to not always agree with everything, to not be compliant. And that's one of the reasons why our country tried to break away from this corrupt system and formulate its own government, a republic, which has been stolen from us, created into a document that was stolen from us, and you did not even get the respect of your government telling you about it, or to this day even admitting it, because that act of 1871 was over 100 years ago, over 100 and almost 150 years ago. And how many people out there know about it? And no one has a problem with the government that overthrew the original company, the original country, created a new document, deceived us with words, and has been doing it for 1+ century. So what? This is probably why we will get worse before we ever get better. Because the average person likes being spoon-fed a little bit of carrots. Give them a couple of carrots, keep them a little bit happy, just enough to get by, and they'll go along with it. If people knew all the stuff that governments have kept from us, where we would be at this point. If people like Nikola Tesla, Wilhelm Reich, and so many others that have been suppressed with their inventions and their ideas, just imagine where we would be at this point. I'm not the type to be complacent. Not when it comes to this. So, to each their own. But I gotta say, I don't like what our government did because they didn't give us a choice. And if they're going to be above the very rules that they expect from us, then that's nothing but hypocrisy. And if you're okay with that, I question those people. Sometimes people like to just stay safe. Just don't rock the boat. Well, if you're on the boat and it's sinking, doesn't matter how much you rock it or how much you pretend it's not happening. You're going underwater just like everybody else. Thanks for watching, guys. Peace.